Good morning. Welcome to Wednesday morning, the Thinking Partner video. I have to own up to have been completely distracted this morning by doing something else. So I can't entirely remember what I was going to talk about. I do have some notes. So you're going to see my eyes going to my notes a lot this morning because I forgot to refresh my memory before I came on live. And instead, I've been doing stuff on my phone and faffing. But anyway, I'm here. Welcome. And the title of this video is What Clarity Actually Feels Like. So this is still quite a sciencey one. Let me start off with what I usually do. Let me paint you a bit of a picture. I want you to think back to a time where you were actually really in it, in your element, which is kind of where I was before this video, actually, to be honest, which is why I was a bit distracted. I lost track of time. So you're not grinding, you're not pushing through, you're not just ticking things off your list of stuff that you need to do. You're really in it, where your thinking is just flowing and you're losing track of time. You're not fighting your own mind to kind of get to the next idea. As I say, time does that sort of strange thing where it kind of speeds up and slows down at the same time, and you feel really fully present in what you're doing. Where you finish something and you thought, yep, that's exactly it. That kind of feeling. So it might have been a conversation that sparked something interesting, a walk where a problem that you've been stuck on for ages just kind of suddenly resolves itself, a morning of writing where the words just arrive without too much effort, a strategy session, if I can say it, strategy session, where you could see the whole picture clearly, where something just sort of suddenly clicks into focus for the first time in months. Even if it's been a while since you've had that feeling, I bet you've had that feeling at some point. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. And how it's your brain actually in quite a specific neurological state, and how there's research that explains what's going on and the sort of the conditions that make that possible. So that's what this episode is about. As I say, I'm going to look at my notes because there are some names. But in case you've never seen me before and you just come across this video, I'm Annette Corbett. I'm a thinking partner for women founders who want to build a meaningful business, but without running themselves into the ground. And these thinking partner videos they're a weekly video about, some of them are about exploring the evidence, some of them are the stories, but it's all about what happens when we don't give ourselves space to think and what becomes possible when we do give ourselves space to think. Today is very much about the latter. And you might notice that if you've been watching these, last week's were a little bit different. It was more conversational, it was less science heavy. That's intentional. I realised that a lot of them have been quite science heavy. And from now on, I'm going to be mixing things up a little bit. Some weeks will be more sciencey. Today's a bit sciencey. Other weeks will be more experiential, I suppose, stories, observations, what it actually looks like and feels like to be working with a thinking partner like me. And as I say, today is a sciencey episode, but it's the science of the positive case. I've been doing a lot of these videos around the impact of stress on the body and the brain, things like overwhelm, what happens when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed. But this one is about what becomes possible when things are going well. So it's the flip side, if you like. Now, you're going to have to bear with me on pronunciation for some of this stuff. I've read the names, I haven't necessarily heard them spoken out loud. So the first name I have is Daniel Kahneman. He's a Nobel Prize winning psychologist, wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow, I think, if I'm getting the title correct. But he describes something called cognitive ease. It's the state your brain is in when things are flowing, when processing feels effortless, when you're not straining against your brain to squeeze out a thought like some kind of cognitive constipation. In this state, your brain generates a particular set of signals. Apparently, things feel familiar, clear, things feel true, decisions arrive more naturally, you feel more confident in your own judgment, You're more creative, you're more open to new ideas. That's sort of lateral thinking. You're more able to see connections between things that you might otherwise miss. And the opposite of cognitive ease, of course, is cognitive strain, which, if you've been following this series, that's exactly what like chronic stress and overwhelm tend to create. The brain kind of straining against itself, trying to push through. So that's when processing feels effortful and slow. There's an erosion of confidence in your own judgment, in self-trust. And the shift between these states from like strain to ease, that's what clarity looks like neurologically, and it has a specific feel. And once you know what you're looking for, you feel it immediately and you recognize it. So this is going to be the interesting one to pronounce. Another psychologist called Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. You don't even want to see what that looks like written down. The spelling is wild. Anyway, our boy Mikhail spent decades studying what he called optimal experience. So these are the moments when you feel like most alive, most engaged, most yourself. And he interviewed athletes and artists and surgeons and musicians and chess players and all these kinds of people. And regardless of what they were doing, they described this sort of similar experience of total absorption, kind of effortless action, that sense of like control without strain, the time distorting, hours feeling like minutes, self-consciousness disappearing, a deep sense of kind of rightness about what they were doing. Now, if you've worked with me, there's an exercise that I often do with clients that is around this kind of feeling of rightness and how that links with your values. That's a whole other conversation. But Mikhail, using his first name because it's easier to say, he called this flow. And according to research, it's one of the most sort of neurologically and psychologically rich states a human being can be in. And here's what's happening to your brain during flow. The prefrontal cortex, in a previous video, I think possibly first or second video, I referred to this as the CEO of your brain. So your prefrontal cortex, it quietens down in a very specific way. So it's not like shutting down, but it's releasing its grip on like self-monitoring and self-doubt, that kind of constant checking and second guessing that we can often do in a kind of quite conscious, aware way. The brain moves from that kind of explicit, effortful processing to something more fluid and something more automatic. Neural networks that don't usually communicate start talking to each other. I guess that might be where the lateral thinking and the connections come from. The brain in flow is doing some of its, close to its best work. Neurochemically, the flow floods the brain with dopamine, norepinephrine, and endorphins, which is why it feels good. And that's why it feels so distinct from that kind of depleted, like cortisol soaked state of chronic overwhelm where you're still getting stuff done, but it's that sort of effort, you're pushing. And here's what I found quite useful about Csikszentmihalyi's research. It's about a set of conditions, which is what I talked about at the beginning of this. It's not just like description of the pleasant state, it's about the conditions, because flow doesn't necessarily happen randomly. You might feel like it does, but it often happens when there are specific things in place. The challenge you're working on has to match your skill level. So it's like stretching you, but without like overwhelming you. You need clear enough goals to know what you're actually working towards. And crucially, you need the cognitive space to be like fully present in the task. So not distractions, not doing other stuff. And that last one is a thing you won't be surprised to know, since that's kind of my thing. That's the one that interests me most. You cannot access flow while you're managing 17 open loops in your head simultaneously. You cannot access it when your cognitive resource is already depleted by decision fatigue and a dozen spinning plates. You cannot access that flow state when your nervous system is running in fight or flight where with your prefrontal cortex, that CEO is operating at reduced capacity. Flow and the clarity that comes from flow requires conditions. And those conditions are like almost the opposite of what you sort of read about, the sort of entrepreneur push through, work 70 hours a minute type, that sort of very hustle culture, solopreneur, I work at 3 o'clock in the morning type vibe. Which means the question isn't whether you are capable of it. You are capable of pushing through and working 70 hours a week and doing all that. I mean, not in a sustainable way. We know you're capable of doing this stuff. We know you're capable of the commitment, of the hard work, because that's probably where you've got, that's probably how you've got to where you are. You've experienced it before, you've done it. The question is whether the conditions exist in your working life for you to access that flow state sustainably and reliably. And for most of the people I talk to, the answer is no, not consistently, at least not by design. So here's the full picture. Now that we've covered both sides of, in these various videos, on one side you have chronic stress, decision fatigue, cortisol, switch cost effects I talked about as well, functional freeze, the whole body toll of never stopping, which is the title of one of my recent videos. So your brain and your body running on conditions that make good thinking genuinely neurologically, like scientifically difficult. And on the other side, you have cognitive ease, you have flow, you have clarity, you have your brain doing what it's actually capable of, the thinking that moves things forwards, the vision, the creative strategy, the decisions made with confidence, the connections, the lateral thinking, all of that stuff. The distance between these two things is not about working harder or being more disciplined or finding a better project management app. It's about conditions. It's about the environment you're creating. The right conditions, space, stillness, consistency, somewhere to properly think things through. Those are what allow the brain to shift from like strain to ease, from depleted to resourced. It's what allows you to sort of move from going through the motions to actually feeling like in it, and that sense of flow and me-ness. And that's what I help founders create. It's not, I was going to say it's something that I teach, but it's not what I teach. I don't teach you anything new. Not really. You already know your business way better than me. I'm not a mentor, because you know your stuff. You're the expert in what you do. You're the expert in you. You're the expert in what you want to achieve, the impact you want to have, the meaningful business you want to create. I help you by making the conditions possible. And yes, I might teach you some tools and some tricks, but mostly it's about creating the space and helping you to create those conditions for deep thinking. I'm working alongside you to create those conditions and doing the deep thinking with you. So as always, I'm going to give you something to take away, question to reflect on. Think about the last time you felt genuinely clear, in flow, in it, thinking well. What were the conditions that made that possible? And how often do those conditions exist in your working week right now? And if you're struggling to answer that question, or if you know the conditions but you never seem to have the time to put them in place, you know what to do. Get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. I'll be here again next Wednesday. Another piece of this. I don't know yet what I'll be talking about because I haven't decided. So you'll just have to watch and find out. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel so you get a notification of what's coming up next. In the meantime, have a fantastic Wednesday. Keep cool. Take care of yourself, and hopefully I'll see you soon.